Can you help somebody who doesn't want to be helped? It breaks my heart to say this, but I don't think you can. There are only so many times that you can pour buckets of water onto somebody who insists on building the bonfire of self-destruction and sparking that match again and again and again. You might be able to blow out the ignition, but they've got a full pack. So what do? You can't play that game forever. It's going to exhaust you. It's going to bring you all the way to your knees with grief, and you're bound to get a couple of third-degree burns on your arms every time that you re-engage with that process of emotionally extinguishing their own self-destruction. Today, I'm doing a topic which is incredibly difficult. I've spent a week thinking about this. I've just come back from a walk, and my heart is heavy, but it's a really important question, and it was submitted by Thornton, so let me bring that up for you on the screen right now. Simple question, exceptionally difficult. How do you give your service to people if they don't want it? It's easy to part ways with a stranger, but the big issue is with family members. Thornton, thank you for the question. I think we've all been in this position, either with a parent, a sibling, or a lover, where we've realized that our efforts are really being wasted. There's only so many times that you can see someone go back to the drink, or the cigarettes, or the abusive behaviors, or gambling away their money, or stopping and starting with what they say they're going to do, and letting yourself get emotionally caught up in that process. Again, most people who haven't resolved their trauma, they've got a full box of matches. And sometimes they need to go through the whole set until they realize that it doesn't work to keep setting themselves on fire. What I'm interested in primarily is what you can do to try and resolve this almost compulsive tendency to love someone that you care about. It's very difficult to put into words, but I suppose an example or two would really bring this question to life. How do you properly give service, or at least attempt to help someone who's close to you and doesn't seem to want the help, or at the very least, just doesn't receive the help? I think I'll go with the friendship example. Everyone can relate to this. Think of a friend that you had in the past, used to be quite close, maybe several years of friendship, maybe it's a recent friendship that's ended, or maybe it's a friendship that ended a few years ago. There was a certain moment for usually that final 30% of the relationship. This is the same with romance as well. That final 30% where you realize that you're just drifting apart, especially if you're on the healing journey and you're resolving the traumas of your childhood and you're aiming towards spirituality or creativity or self-actualization in one form or another. The paths really diverge, and there's this moment where you have to address the tension in between, and often, hopefully you can relate to this, unfortunately, it is often this very prototypical pattern where you will have a very good day, you will be in a great energy, something wonderful happened in your internal world, and you come to share with your friend, and they're all the way down here. They're anxious, they're depressed, they're nervous, they're jittery, they're paranoid, they're combative. Whatever that energy might be, there's a big energetic gap. What happens? You leap down and you try and lift them up. You spend several hours in the conversation, you help them out yet again with their life circumstance, and you pull them up just a little bit. And at the end of the 4 hours of talking, you're both at the same level. You came all the way down from here, you lifted them up from down in the pits, and then what continues? Well, several weeks go by, maybe even just several hours, and it goes back to this, and then you do that. And it's a strange game of emotional codependence where you just can't stop caring. But why do you care so much? Why do you need them to change to feel okay with yourself? Usually, it's because you love them deeply and your life has significant threads which are tied to them. You can't just cut off a best friend. It's very difficult to just stop talking to your parents or never respond to a sibling because you genuinely care about them. But this game, this constant game of dropping your energy to lift them up and being the saviour, the salvational figure, the one who sees how things could be better and just can't help but want to bring that truth into their perspective. That game doesn't work, and you know it doesn't work because that friendship ended, and it didn't feel like it was a massive loss initially. Kind of felt like you weren't being pulled down by an anchor of emotional heaviness. Later on, I imagine your heart started to get involved, and the grief starts to happen, the genuine feeling of heartbreak, the heaviness in your chest where you know that you've just lost someone who was important to you. That usually lasts for several weeks or several months or even several years, but it's better than this game of always lowering yourself, and at the very least not getting burnt on your arms every time you try and extinguish their own self-immolation. There's no easy answer. I've seen this pattern time and time again with clients that I've worked with. I've seen it in my own life and friendships, family connections, and romantic relationships. Whatever tends to happen when you've got two people coming together is either you're both on a growth path, you're on a stagnation path, or you're on a downwards path. Generally speaking, you'll find people who come into your life when you're in certain ways of living in the world. If you're in a very expansive stage, maybe right now the reason that you've been resonating with these videos is that you're on that upwards curve. You're joining me in an energy that I have where it's like hope and joy and healing and creativity and spiritual expansion of seeing the world as it actually is, rather than the trauma glasses which smother us down into the lower realms. You have to resonate with this, otherwise you wouldn't be watching my videos. Otherwise you would go and click on the explore page and you'd look for the latest celebrity gossip and you'd go and badmouth your neighbour. It's worlds apart. And unfortunately, if you're committed to this path of inner work, you will level up and you will progress in your awareness at a much quicker rate than the vast majority of people around you. It's not to say that you're superior. You don't need to get onto the mountain and proclaim just how wonderful you are compared to everyone else. And I especially hate this language of people being sheep or being asleep. If you still have that language of calling people sheep or saying that they're asleep, please banish that from your vocabulary, because that is not useful and you are setting yourself up for a grandiose inflation, which is going to be popped like a balloon and you will fall back down into your own sleepy sheep state. Awful language. It's very divisive. It's unnecessary. If you actually want to extend love, you're not going to be calling them all of those names, right? Anyway, rant aside, how do you maintain that high vibe, as the hippies call it? Well, you don't drop yourself all the way down unless you know that that person is genuinely receptive to being lifted up. And this is a wonderful situation with a different friend that you could probably think of. That friend who you met where you could tell that they were in the transformational moment. They were quitting something, they maybe quit drinking, or they got out of a really bad relationship with someone who was no good for them, or they finally started on the career path which is best for their soul. And you're already in that kind of way of living in the world, and they come in, and you have a beautiful, instant connection. How wonderful is it when that happens? It's a rare experience. The longer that you go down the path, the harder it is to find people who get it. But when you do find someone like that, you get the natural feeling of happiness, because you know that your giving will not only be received, but you've actually met someone. Hold up, you've met someone, one of those rare people who can give back what you need for a truly give and take, mutually beneficial friendship. And that's wonderful. And if you've got someone like that in your life, or maybe multiple people like that in your life, hold on to them. They are rare. Nourish that relationship like a gardener watering his favorite flowers. I really, really love how special those relationships are. And again, it's not limited to just friendships, romantic situations, or maybe a family member who you haven't seen in a while. They've gone through some kind of hero's journey of internal transformation, and then you meet again in a higher place. But notice the language that I used there. They went on their hero's journey, and then they meet you where you're at. That's the way to help someone. I wish it were different, because you have to go through the period of many months and sometimes many years of completely stepping away. I mean, really going all the way back. I'd go all the way through the wall if I could, because that's how far you have to go. You just can't stay close to them if they're in that cycle of burning themselves up, because you're going to get consumed. You have to create the distance. This can be done while still being in contact. You can create emotional distance from someone that you're living with and you have to live with. If you're a young person living with your parents, for example, there are ways to be polite and cordial but not get too over-involved. If you're in a romantic relationship and it's clearly not working out, it's been many years, might be the time to have a conversation about something really needing to happen, or the relationship will unfortunately start to dissolve. If you're in a friendship where you don't live with that person, this is usually the easiest scenario because you can have a very conscious conversation. And maybe it's a bit of an overshare, but I've had this kind of situation recently with someone who's very close to me, where I've noticed the same pattern of me overgiving and doing the drop and quench kind of pattern. And I had the conversation where I honestly and openly said that I don't feel like this is a friendship anymore. And we agreed through 3 hours of difficult conversation, both of us, two men, crying a little bit on the phone, just mourning a very old friendship, over a decade of friendship. But we didn't end it there. We decided to give it 4 months of no contact and then have a call, and then we did. I updated about my life, he updated about his life, and if he's watching the video, we're doing a good job, I think. And he admitted he's still not there, he's still working out some of the patterns which were destructive in our situation. But he's working on it. And the way for him to work on it, and the way for our friendship to get to that next level of commitment and beautiful connection, is that he goes off on his healing journey with his life, his healing, his career, his relationships. And then we come back and resonate more with the kind of energy that I've got, which is very much, as you've seen in these videos, potential, hope, putting in the work, every day, commitment, structure, patient, consistent practice. And I'm still hopeful. I hold that candle in my heart, in the back chamber. I don't hold the expectation anymore that he has to do these things or that the friendship will definitely work out, because I can't be the decider of that. None of us can decide if a relationship's going to work out. Some of it is left to God. It's quite dramatic language, but we can't write our own fate. People have to make their own choices, and there is such a thing as free will when it comes to healing. But if you can consciously communicate, and someone's willing to accept these temporary healing boundaries of distance so that you can both go on your arcs, and again, maybe you're the problem, maybe you're the issue, and maybe it's actually the inverted state where there's someone in your life who, if you pause and think, is always giving you a lot more than you're giving back, and you're kind of taking advantage of them. Maybe you could level up your game, maybe you could give back more into that relationship by working on some of the areas which are still wounded, and it feels like it's resources which you haven't got to give. The healing journey goes both ways. With family members, it's often the most difficult. I can't give you the specific advice about your specific situation, Florin, or anyone else. But you can figure this out. You can figure it out by letting people make their own choices, and by just, again, having that step back approach. You can still be in contact. I'm still looking at you, but I'm just a little bit step back. I'm just a little bit further away. And it feels very different. And it's their choice. If they want to step forwards, and maybe they actually want to do 2 steps, and the relationship changes on a real, genuinely, literally new footing. Time will tell. It's a very hard topic. I've put this video off for over a week, and I felt like I was going to burst into tears at any point, because family, friends, relationships, we've all been through these kinds of experiences, and I think if we're honest with ourselves, in a moment like this, you can always pause and think of one relationship in your life, one major relationship in your life where you know there's a bit of an energetic imbalance and there's some conscious communication that needs to take place. It's an honest way of dealing with the difficulties of humanity. You can get angry and you can get vengeful and you can punch people away, but that won't work. There's grief, there's heartbreak, there's a feeling of heaviness and sadness, and there's a hope for things to be better, but you have to let it all go while also putting in the work, and that is the paradox of healing a relationship. I hope this has helped. If you're interested in videos like this, which I imagine you are because you watched all the way to the end, here's another one. We're talking about the topic of evil and why you shouldn't commit evil to your own body. It's about really dark things. Gonna film it for you. I'll see you over there.